We are so honored to have you today, Peggy, and the session is all yours, madam.
Thank you, Casey, so much. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. And I do want to start by thanking Casey and ELB Learning for hosting this session today. This is a topic that has been of paramount importance to me for over 20 years, and that's creating a culture of sustainable measurement in L&D. I just want to give you a little brief background about me to sort of set the stage for why this has been so important to me, and then we'll get into the actual content. I started my learning journey as a practitioner. I worked for Hewlett Packard Company. I took it over, really didn't know anything about measurement, and learned the challenges of making measurement into something that was truly sustainable. One of my primary goals when I got there was to make sure that people were actually using the data that we were generating from them. And I accomplished that by the time I left, but there was still so much more to be done. I left that role to become a consultant, which has been an utter joy. I love being in the consulting world because I am interacting with clients of all sorts of different backgrounds and industries and experiences. And I've done that in two ways, through my own company, Parskey Consulting, but I also have had a long relationship with Explorance and its predecessors. And I want to give a shout out to Explorance for providing me with that opportunity to engage with so many organizations over the years. And then, in addition to the role as a consultant, I took on the role of an educator as I was part of the launch of the Center for Talent Reporting in 2012 and was responsible for the certification of people going through our TDRP methodology. If you're not familiar with it, feel free to reach out to me and I can educate you a little bit about it. And then I got to do something that I've been wanting to do my entire career, which is to author a book. And I've authored three. One, the one that's up for the drawing today, and two others, Measurement Demystified and the Measurement Demystified Field Guide. So I've seen this entire domain from so many different angles, and through it all have really cared about how do we endure and make endure those things that we start. And so that's what this is all about. For today, what I'd like to do is I have three objectives that I'd like to accomplish today. One is to discover, for you to discover what sustains learning measurement beyond the initial rollout and why it often stalls. Unfortunately, I see a lot of that. And I want to talk about why I think that happens and what are the things that you can be doing to avoid that. I'm a big fan of maturity frameworks and capability frameworks, so we're going to use one today to assess your own organization's current state and give you a starting point on what you might be able to do in your own organization. And then last is to make sure that you can identify behaviors and strategies that both leaders and individual contributors can use to support lasting measurement in their organizations. So that's where we are, and we're going to continue to walk through these, and you'll get to participate a lot. Want you to participate, as Casey mentioned, and would really like to get your questions as we go and also at the end. The first thing I always do when I talk about measurement is start it with the why bother measuring learning. Now, I know that you're here. Hopefully, you're not an audience I have to convince of why bother measuring learning, but it doesn't hurt to start with that. And I'm going to share three numbers with you. One is $403 billion. This is a number that comes from training industry, and it is an estimate of what they think that organizations are going to spend in 2025 training their employees. That is a huge number. And we can't really control that number, and we can't determine whether that's the right number. Is it too little? Is it too much? Don't know, unless we're actually measuring. The second set of numbers is 30 to 55%. This is a number, these numbers come from Explorance. Explorance has a very robust set of measures of learning that is how much is applied on the job. And they've been doing this for years through their Metrics That Matter platform. And they estimate that between 30 to 55% of all learning is never applied on the job. That's huge. And what that means is that 120 to 220 billion of that 403 is never getting used. It's going essentially into the trash. And we cannot reduce that number if we aren't measuring. So that's sort of the second reason. And then this last one came from Watershed, which was a study they did, and they found that 61% of L&D professionals feel executive pressure to show impact. And they should be feeling pressure. This to me is a good number. I'd actually like to see it higher. I'd like to see more like 80%. But it's saying that leaders, and not just L&D leaders, but business leaders want to know, what am I getting for my money? So they're under pressure. We know we're wasting money and we're spending a lot. So if those three don't make the case for why we should measure, then I'm not sure what does, but we really need to do it, and it needs to become a core capability within L&D. What I want to talk about now is I really want to talk about how do we sustain what we start, and what should this look like? What does it look like when we're doing this and doing it well? And what does it look like when we're not? This is a maturity curve. I love maturity curves. And maturity curves is such that we have at the bottom the lowest level of maturity or capability, and that's when measurement is fragmented and inconsistent. The second level is when you've got some foundation, you've put some basic processes in place, still early, but you don't really have the governance, may not all the support you need. Third level is coordinated and accepted into the learning ecosystem, and it evolves to meet strategic needs. Now, a colleague of mine who I have utmost respect for recently commented that, and I'm hoping I'm not stalling because I just got a note my internet's unstable, great timing, as that he said, I don't use maturity curves anymore because they don't reflect real life. And they don't. Because what we did, and this is a colleague of mine did this, she said, I wish that it all looked like this, that it was always up and to the right, but it looks more like this red dashed line, which is, we start out with all the best of intentions. There's a sponsor, we may have visioning sessions, I've done many of those. We've got pronouncements of what we're going to do. We have a plan, we get everybody together, we assign roles and accountabilities, and then something happens. Actually, some things happen. It's usually not just one. And it kind of fades off. And not only does it stall or plateau, but sometimes it goes, kind of in a downward direction, and sometimes it goes away altogether. So this is problematic, and it's this that I want to talk about today. But before we go too far, I'm going to have Casey pull up a poll, and I want to know where you think your organization is today. And so are you at the fragmented and consistent, foundational and emerging? You've got some basic processes, coordinated and accelerating, or it's embedded. And by the way, if you're embedded, please, I want to talk to you. And a perfectly valid answer is, I don't know. But give it your best shot as to what you think. And what I want you to do is, after you make your choice, write it down somewhere. You can type it into, notes. You can write it on a piece of paper, because we're going to be coming back to this, and I'm going to be asking you to reassess using a little diagnostic. I love some of the comments that I'm seeing while you're doing this. So this is great. Is foundational and stuck there forever. And the comment earlier about, I bet the 61% is closer to 100. I hope so. I really do. Okay, where are we at? Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is interesting. So Casey, can everybody see the poll results?
I believe so. Guys, can you throw that in the chat? Can you see the results as well?
Yes, okay, good. All right, so I don't have to read off the numbers, but the highest is foundational emerging. That's good, actually. But a third of you said that you're fragmented and consistent. 13% say that you are coordinated. And there's two of you who indicated that measurement is embedded. Seriously, I would reach out to me. I really would like to know what you're doing. And I'm making this offer actually to anybody here. If you would like to talk further about what your challenges are, I'm open. I'd love to hear stories. Working with a colleague on yet another book on this topic, and would love to hear from you. So, so please, tell me your story, and I would love to hear it. So this is interesting. It's kind of what I would have thought, and there's hope, right? There are things that we can be doing. So let's talk about that. One thing that I have noticed is that there are always warning signs when measurement is going to start to take that dip. And I wanted to share with you 6 that I've seen. I could probably share 15, but I've chose my top 6. And what I'm going to ask you also after I go through them is which ones have you seen in your organization? And as it says here, they're not technical, they're cultural, they're structural. They have to do with the way we've designed it and set it up. The first I call the vanishing sponsor. The sponsor who gets involved at the beginning. They are really with it. They're on top of it. They might host a visioning session. They may do a strategy planning session, and they're there. And then slowly they start to back away and they stop talking about it, and they treat it as if it was an initiative. And now that it's been launched, there's nothing much for them to do. The other thing I see with sponsors is they vanish and they delegate to somebody who is often not really up for the job. And that's always a bit problematic for me because we really need capable people who are going to be measurement leads. And when they're not, it will fade. And then sometimes they leave altogether. But the vanishing sponsor is one big red flag that you're probably not going to get to where you hoped you would. The second is the bolted on, not built in. We had an organization who came to us at Explorance and had been working on a massive sales program for 2 years or more and had been implementing it. It had ILT, there was e-learning, there were job aids, there were communities of practice, there was this massive spreadsheet with rows and columns and massive amount of tracking of who had been into what and what were they missing and what did they need to do and how did they need to reinforce. And they came to us and said, we need you to evaluate, help us evaluate what this program is doing, because leaders are now asking. Now, I've done way more of these after the fact ones than I would care to admit, but it always pains me. It's like, why didn't we do this at the beginning? And what she said is, I tried to do it at the beginning, and leadership didn't see that it was of value to do it then and to get it started then. Instead, they want it now. So what happened was she couldn't even sell it as the bolt-on, but when it's bolted on, when it's done after the fact, that is always a red flag, that it's seen as something we do just because we want to prove something. The third, platform over people. This is where organizations almost always have an LMS, but then they realize they need some sort of an evaluation system. So they bring something in to evaluate learning, and they think that that's going to solve all their problems. This is going to be the answer to their dreams. They just start automating, they start pushing stuff out, and what they discover is that it's not the answer, because people are the thing that make it happen. And it is one of many vehicles to get to sustainability. Fourth one, noise versus signal. This I see often enough that I wanted to bring it up here, where we work with organizations who don't want to impose standards, and they certainly don't want to impose it for evaluating learning, because every program is unique, they say, and we can't possibly have the same evaluation for everything. Now, I don't propose a one-size-fits-all. I think what you do for leadership needs to be somewhat different from what you might do for compliance, but I think it's really important for organizations to be making sure that they have some standards, because what inevitably happens is the leader will come out and say, hey, I need something that tells me how we're doing as a function, and they can't because everybody's doing it differently. And that is always a death knell for any kind of consistent, sustainable learning. The fifth one is dashboard graveyard. Any of you have a dashboard graveyard? We think that the answer to the problem is we just have to get all the reports out there. Just get them lots of reports. And I see wonderful people, well-intentioned, who create tons of reports, tons of dashboards, and then they wonder why nobody is using them. And oftentimes that happens a lot. Reports sit idle. And I actually had that experience in my early days at HP. When I first took over, I was sending out these reports that were sort of passed on to me, voluminous reports. And I sent it on the first time and I didn't get any response. And I thought, that could be good, that could be bad. It could be bad, it means nobody's looking at it, or it could be good. They're perfectly understandable and they don't have any questions. Next quarter, I sent them out and I realized I had left out the single biggest business unit in my report. And so it was sort of good news, bad news. The good news was nobody noticed. The bad news, nobody noticed. So that was a case of reporting slash dashboard graveyard. And the last is we get insights, we've got data, we know what's wrong, but we don't do anything with it. We don't do anything because we're overwhelmed. We don't do anything with it because it's too hard. We don't do anything because nobody's holding us accountable. So yes, so somebody is saying, I created a scorecard and dashboard recently out of feedback loop to go with it. Good for you. That's really important because if they're not using it, there's a reason. So these are the pitfalls. Now, what I want to know from you, in case he's going to launch another poll, is which of these things have you seen? And I think you can select any of them, right, Casey? So let's get the poll going, and let's see what we observe. Oh, this is a single choice. So select the one that you see most. I should have made this a select all that apply. I'm going to be interested in seeing what you come back with because I see there's a few in here that I see a lot, and I'm really curious. And I'm just, while we're doing that, I'm looking at the answers. Yeah, still stuck on butts and seats. Yeah, that's another one where we only measure efficiency and not effectiveness. I probably could have added that. I had a long list of watchouts. Activity over impact. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so the one that came out on top was, want to make sure we have a tie. Bolted on, not built in. 20% of you picked that as your top. And then another 20% said insights ignored. But we had some pretty big numbers for the dashboard graveyard at 17% and vanishing sponsor. So yeah, so you experiencing these two, and a few of you even said the noise machine. So these really are watchouts. Oh, Casey, they said they can't see the results. Oh, good. Okay, great. All right, I guess we can see it now. Perfect, thank you. So you can just, it'll give you a moment to look at these. I think this is really important that you see them. And I'm just curious in chat, I'd be interested to know what's your reaction to that. Does that surprise you? Is it what you would have expected? Let's keep going and then people can respond. So I'm going to keep moving. I'll just close this. All right. So someone said I would have selected most of these if it was a select all that imply. And I wonder how many people had a hard time selecting just one. I know. It should have been select all that apply, but it was interesting to see which was your top one. So how do we address this? Well, the way we have to address it is we have to build it into the design, right? We have to design for sustainability. I'm a big person on design. I think about design all the time. I think about packages that I open up and and anything that, like, did anyone ever test out the thing that they actually designed? So this is a big deal to me. And if it's going to be sustainable, L&D has to shift from being an initiative to becoming, in essence, infrastructure. It becomes part of the way we do business, as fundamental to operations as what we do with sales measures or quality control measures. And there's a big move afoot. I think we have people like Cognota, who's doing a lot with LearnOps, and that's really where we want to get it. So what does this look like? Well, and I've alluded to these, but I want to sort of go through this a little bit more. One is we need strong leadership. A leader, not only the leader like the CLO, but we need a really strong measurement lead. My view is the measurement lead should be a director level, and it needs to be somebody who is not just a technician and a technical person, but somebody who understands their job as being really all about building relationships. So it's got to be that. We have to embed it into the process. Measurement is built into the workflows, not bolted on afterwards, as we've been talking about in chat. We have to balance the investment in people, process, and technology. Whenever it's unbalanced, it doesn't work. If we overinvest in people and we don't invest in technology, we can't scale. If we overinvest in technology and not in people, then the work can't get done, because this is a change project and change involves people. So we have to do both. And part of what we have to do is promote trust and build relationships. Standards become the norm. Now, one of the things I want to be clear about is what standards are useful for your company may not work for somebody else. So there are guidelines, and Dave Vance and I, who wrote Measurement Demystified, provide guidance to it. But if your organization feels differently, that's your call. That's what you should be doing. And so standards have to be appropriate to you, and they may vary by industry, and they're not one and done. The worst thing we can do is to set standards that just never change. So the thing that's so important here is, and I'm going to ask this in chat, we have been doing informal learning for years, and the percentage of learning that is actually informal has grown, and there's been a lot more of people doing stuff on their own. How well are you measuring informal learning in your organizations? My experience is that I've been talking about it for 10 years. I've made proposals about it for at least 10 years on things that we should be doing. And now that we've got AI, there's really no excuse. And so I think that it's really important for us to be thinking about how do these standards evolve to meet the way that we are training and developing people. Decision-driven reporting. Reporting isn't just what you have data to report on. It's what people need to make decisions about. And it should also be driven by role. What the CLO needs is not going to be the same as a program manager, which is not the same as a manager of trainers. So we need to be role-based, but also decision-based. And last, continuous improvement has to be a value, and measurement needs to become a value. I see a lot of organizations where measurement is not a value. It's not considered to be important or critical. And we have to be continuously getting better so that we improve the impact we're making on our efficiency and our effectiveness. And we can't do it without data. So these are kind of the key elements. Now let's shift gears to building endurance. So I want to get to that. But before we do, Casey, are there any questions that have come up that we should be addressing?
None outside of the ones you're addressing on the spot from the chat.
Okay. All right. I love what you're doing in chat. Keep doing it. I'm trying to multitask here, but I really love the comments that are coming through. So please keep doing that. So let's talk about this. So I am going to talk about a model. I created a model when I left Hewlett-Packard because I realized that there were so many things that I should have done and didn't do for sustainability. And now that I was becoming a consultant, I needed to think about this issue differently. And so I created a model. And over the years, I introduced it and I did a lot of work with the Metrics That Matter team. And in the past 5 years, I've had a thought partner with a colleague, Steve Lang. And I think Steve is on this webinar. So hi, Steve. And Steve and I have been working on this model to simplify it, to make it more approachable, and to really pressure test it based upon the myriad of experiences we've had collectively. So I'm going to walk through the model and give you an opportunity to think about how it might apply. So when I think about these levers for endurance, one of the things that measurement should enable us to do is to be a driver of strategic change. We need to align with the business. We hear this all of the time, but I don't know that we always know what it means. Alignment is not about mapping our training to the business. It is about getting alignment on the goals the business wants to achieve and what that means for L&D. And in fact, even determining what the spend level should be and how much value we're going to provide. Measurement is the vehicle to do that. We cannot do it just by doing a mapping exercise. We need to be building partnerships and coalitions. This is the role of leadership to do this, to be building these. And Steve and I did a whole series of interviews, and I'm going to talk about what we found from them. But one of the things that did come out was the really successful organizations have built trusted partnerships with the businesses and coalitions of people who are really behind the measurement effort and know that measurement can help them. We have to focus on change agility. So measurement can help us do that, to figure out, are we keeping up with the market? Are we doing the things that we should be doing? And as I mentioned earlier, we have to integrate into operations. It has to be part of the way work gets done. That happens in this quadrant. The second quadrant is around capability enablement. We have to develop core skills of practitioners in learning and development on measurement. We do not have to build measurement experts. I don't expect anybody who isn't in measurement to be a measurement expert, but we need to have measurement fluency, data fluency. People need to feel comfortable with using data to help not only guide decisions, but help guide how they're going to manage their programs. If you've ever looked at the V model from the Phillips, it basically is telling you, you need to start with the question of what are we trying to achieve? What does success look like? And then how do we measure that? So we have to start developing that. We also can't do it as a one and done. So what I see with organizations, and I've seen this before, I've trained lots and lots of organizations. I've conducted these trainings. I've developed these curricula. I've done it. And then they do it once and it's over. And the question is, what? You think your organization's not going to change? You think all the people who are there today are never going to leave? So what happens? They leave. They take all that knowledge with them. New people come in who probably don't know a whole lot about this because it's not something that most people come in knowing. And so now we just slide back to the baseline, wherever we were. So we have to do this ongoing. That doesn't mean it has to be a huge investment, but we have to provide enablement through communities of practice, through tools, through continuous learning. And we have to create meaningful role descriptions that embed the accountabilities in it. And I've worked on that one too. And believe me, that's not easy, but it needs to be done, because how we measure the success of a program manager should not be the same as how we measure the success of an operations manager. So we need to be really, really clear about how this is all going to work. I want to take a look at the comments. So someone says, Peggy, please tell me that you and Jess Amelie meet up frequently to talk about how you're changing the L&D world. I love Jess. Yes, I've talked to her a couple of times. We've interviewed her. She's interviewed me. I love her. And I'm so excited about her book that's coming out. So yes, absolutely. Yes, Steve and I just adore her. She's fabulous. So if you know Jess, told her I give her a shout out. Next one, scale and efficiency. Already talked about this. You can't do it without scaling. Unless you're tiny, you need technology. But you also need to do things efficiently in the sense that you don't want to have a lot of time being spent on, managing the evaluation process or whatever you're doing. So you do need automation to do it. We need standardization, as I've already talked about, and again, appropriate to you. And you need tools so that you can have job aids and ways for people to know how to use this stuff without feeling like a dummy. I mean, in the early days, I felt like such an idiot. I just didn't even know what anything was. And I luckily had a very kind consultant who guided me. So we need to do that when new people come in. They're not going to know it. We need to make sure that we help elevate them through this efficient mechanism that we have. And I also want to say AI is going to come in here. AI has a huge opportunity to impact what we do and really impact our efficiency and effectiveness if we use it right. I use it all the time. And the last, but certainly not least, data-informed decision-making. We need to enable decisions. We need people to use the data they get and to create value from it. And we need to use reporting to create accountability. This came out of a conversation that actually I had with Sam Rasab, who's the CEO of Explorens. And he said, we should be building accountability into our reports. And he's 100% right. You start to say, hey, program manager, here are the things that aren't working with this program. Here are the 5 things that you should be working on to improve the overall reception and applicability and impact of this program. And there's no reason why we can't start to do that with AI that is available to us. So I think that there's a lot here that we can address. So questions about this before we move into the next section, which is an add-on to it that Steve and I learned when we did all these interviews.
We've got a good question that came in from Destiny that said, what would you say are the top 3 skills / capabilities learning professionals need to have to successfully implement a sustainable measurement system?
Great question. Thank you so much for that question. So I think there's a few. One is learning a practice that I call, and I think most people call it this, is logic modeling. It sounds really sophisticated and complicated, but it's really very basic, which is being able to show the chain of influences from the point at which we are, it's essentially, the activity level to the effectiveness level to the impact level, and to be able to demonstrate from a program how we can show this chain of influences of impact. It's a very simple model. You can find all sorts of things on the web, but I think learning how to do that, and whenever I've done logic modeling with program managers on it, it really helps to identify the specific measures that we have, from the efficiency measures to the effectiveness measures to the impact measures. And it's really a very simple process. So there's somebody said, I've been trying to promote logic modeling a team as a tool to help them connect the dots. Absolutely. So if you're not familiar with it, look it up. If you want more on it, I actually wrote a whole chapter in a book on it, and I think I have the chapter. I could send it to you on how to do it. It's very basic. So I think that's one thing. I think the other is to become conversant with the different types of measures. So Jackie, just email me and happy to send it along. So learning about the basic types of measures, the efficiency, the effectiveness, the outcomes, things we talk about measurement demystified, because understanding that we can't just do, somebody said earlier, we have to have butts and seats. That's the thing, we're looking at activity. We have to go beyond that, and we have to have a balance of these measures. And we talk about what that is. So I think people need to understand that. And then I think they need to have enough fluency with how to look at data and how to look at reports and how to be able to discern what's going on and the kinds of things that we should be doing differently to improve our programs. But again, I don't think you need to be a measurement expert. I think there's a lot in the basics of measurement that are going to help serve you well. And there's a lot of frameworks out there, and there's a ton of books. So somebody asked, what's the name of the book? The book that I just mentioned was Measurement Demystified, that I co-wrote with Dave Vance. And then there is the Measurement Demystified Field Guide, which is an actual workbook where you work through it. And some Jay just said, understand the business and how L&D supports it. I agree with that 100%. That is sort of the foundation of what you have to do, because you have to be able to talk to the business and you have to talk their language. And so if you're working with people in manufacturing, you need to learn the language of manufacturing. If you're working with people in financial services, you need to learn the language of financial services, because you're not going to be able to connect those dots, as someone said earlier, without understanding that. So thank you, Jay. That was a great add. So Steve and I were looking at this and we said, we like this. We like this model. We think it's reflective of the things that need to happen in organizations. And there's a lot of detail behind this. So I'm just presenting the overview. And we thought, let's figure out what is missing, because we know that it works in many cases, and organizations that are successful are often doing all of these things, maybe unwittingly, but they're doing them because they have the instinct. They know that they've got to have these relationships, they've got to build capability, scale, good reporting, all that. So we interviewed people. We interviewed about 12 people. Jess was among them, of people who we have a lot of respect for. And John Maddox, who's on this call today, we interviewed him too. Little fan club here. And so we just asked them to tell your story. What's your story? Tell us what you've done, what's worked, what hasn't. We really kept it very open-ended. And then as we started to synthesize the results of it, we started to see this theme that kept coming up. And in some ways, the theme was kind of an oh duh moment that we had. I don't know, you've all had those, I'm sure. And we said, oh my gosh, the thing that's missing, the X factor, is leadership and leadership behaviors. So, John, I know nothing, and I said nothing. Oh no, you said wonderful things, things that have helped us. He's been such a all other thought partner as well. But what I realized was, even though the leadership piece might be an oh duh, it's always about leaders, right? What I also realized, we've never told leaders what we need them to do to make this sustain. We've never been clear about their role. We've never really articulated what this looks like when they're doing it well. Interestingly enough, one of the people we interviewed, who is fabulous, I don't know if I should call him out or not, but he's fabulous. And we took the interview and we ran it through AI. We said, we want another one of him. And we said, give us the job description of, if we wanted to hire another of this person, what that would look like. And it gave us a set of behaviors that interestingly matched some job descriptions that were already out, in the ether there. So what we started to realize, we haven't really articulated. So what we started to do is identify what these leadership behaviors look like. And this, again, high level, there's a lot of detail behind this, is that what we need for strategic change is we need leaders to sponsor and champion these efforts, not just in L&D, but in the business. And they need to do it by building these relationships and building trust and demonstrating to the business that measurement is helpful to them too. So this isn't, we do it for them, we do it with them. A lot of partnerships, co-creation, collaboration. On this capability enablement, we need leaders to signal the importance of people building these kinds of skills that we talked about: logic modeling, understanding the business, understanding the basics of measurement, being able to read a report, and to support it through training, through development, through ongoing practice. And I'll talk about this a little bit also later, giving them safe space to do that. For scale and efficiency, we need to fund it. This stuff isn't going to happen without any money. And even though there was a really wonderful book written on measurement on a shoestring, you still need money to have technology, and you will not scale without it. But we also need leaders to help focus so that we don't create a million measures. When I look at organizations who say, oh, look, I've got 100 measures, I go, that's not good. I used to go through lists of measures with my clients, and I said, I'm going to give you an award by getting rid of stuff, not adding. There's a phrase I heard once that, and I think Steve Jobs said this, and maybe somebody else, maybe it was attributed to Jobs, but perfection isn't when there's nothing more to add. Perfection is there's nothing left to take away. That's where you need to get to. Nothing left to take away. Um, Data-informed decision making. We need leaders to use the data and demonstrate that they're using it. They need to model the behavior. Yeah, as Steve just said, when people provide a list of 45 KPIs, they don't understand what the K stands for. That is true. K stands for key, and doesn't mean we have 45. So they need to model the behavior. They need to use the data, and they need to expect others and mobilize others to do it. So we have built out this entire model so that we can then provide more guidance. So we have realized that we need to be really helping leaders understand what their role is and what this looks like. I'm not going to go through this in detail. There's a couple of things I'm going to highlight on this, but this is what exemplary organizations do. And the piece I really want to focus on is what it enables, because there's certain words in here that are deliberate. One is it's about co-creation with partners for goals. Again, this should never be I'm doing it to somebody, or I'm doing it in the background and I'll just do this big ta-da and show you. No, there needs to be partnerships built. Steve and I interviewed somebody where they did it that way, and he discovered that it wasn't going to stick, and they had to abandon it, and they had to start again, and they had to start again by building the partnerships. The ability to practice in a safe space. We can't use measurement as punitive. If we use it as punitive and not as for learning, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, and it will never stick around. It has to begin in small steps. The organizations that want to just launch it out everywhere all at once, I guess that movie, Everywhere, Everything Everywhere All at Once, probably got the name wrong, mangled it, apologies, but it shouldn't be like that. Take small steps, validate, see what's working, see what isn't, and then scale. And there was an organization I worked with many years ago, and I was just always so impressed by the way they rolled it out. They did a business unit at a time. They had an onboarding process. They worked with people, they defined roles, they did everything really, really well. And it was very impressive to watch them do it. And then the leaders modeling data use and asking really smart questions. I'm not going to let you get out of here without some readiness and action planning. So we're going to do something. You're going to get involved here. I want you to take a little quiz. So I asked you earlier, write down what your level was that you had, because that was your guess, right? So hopefully you wrote that down. We're going to take a little diagnostic, and you're going to do this. We're doing this really old school. You're going to do this on paper and pencil, or you can type it out. I don't care. They're going to be 5 questions. And each of the 5 questions, I want you to respond that appropriately so that it reflects the extent to which your organization exhibits the behavior. Now, be honest. I've had surveys come in recently where everybody was like, fabulous. It's like we're all above average drivers, that kind of thing. So be honest. I'm not going to see your data. We're only going to see it in the aggregate. And so we need to make sure that you just really be honest. Now, you already have been, so I suspect you will be here. So the first question is, to what extent are measurement efforts used to track the impact of learning or talent initiatives on business goals, such as revenue growth, productivity, customer sat, employee retention? And just rate it from not at all to very great extent. So mark that down. Second question, to what extent do you have a consistent infrastructure, software, tools, processes, governance that supports ongoing measurement? 1 to 5. To what extent do leaders actively support and promote the use of measurement to inform decisions? 1 to 5. Fourth question, to what extent is internal capability developed to interpret and apply measurement data? And last, are measurement results routinely reviewed and used to drive improvement? 1 to 5. Now, I want you to have answered all of them, because you're going to be adding it up. So I need you to add it up now. the lowest score you can get is 5. The highest is 25. So if you're outside those bounds, redo your arithmetic. Just as an aside, even though I do a lot of analysis, I am terrible at arithmetic. So I probably would have needed a calculator for this. It's sad, but it's true. While you're doing that, you're adding it up, I want to comment, Ed. So reach out to me. I'd love to understand what you did in sales enablement environment and would really like to understand what you've done. So please, you don't need to post your stuff here. Don't post your stuff here. Hold on to it. I don't need to see it. We're going to do a poll. So in this poll, 5 to 10 points is fragmented and inconsistent. Foundational merging is 11 to 15, coordinated and accelerating is 16 to 20, and embedded and evolving is 21 to 25. And what I want you also to do while you're doing this, I want you to put in chat, were your results for here higher or lower than what you originally picked? So did you come out foundational merging, but you thought you were fragmented and consistent? So just indicate in the chat whether you were higher or lower. Oh, you were lower by a point. Same. Good. All right. So do we have enough data to share? Lower, higher? Oh, a little bit of all. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, actually, this is interesting. So Casey, I hope we can share these, we can keep these results because I'm going to want these. So half of you, based upon this little mini quiz, which, again, we're not going to, statistic validity and reliability, all that stuff, I'm not, but it is kind of roughly going to tell us. Half of you said you're fragmented and consistent. Another 25% foundational and emerging. And then there's still some of you, more of you, by one, who said that you're embedded and evolving. Again, please, I'd like to hear from you, and I would like to know what you're doing because I think it could be really helpful. And somebody said, Destiny said, considering where we started a year ago, I think I ended up where I thought we would be. And somebody was higher. So I think what's interesting about this is that one thing is it's always really helpful to know where you are. And so I'm going to talk about doing some action planning with what you've learned here today and walking away with some kind of an action plan. And then we can have any last set of questions. So you've got to activate the right moves if we're going to do anything. You've learned something. So now I want you to walk away with a little bit of an action plan. And I'm not going to go through this whole table, but for each level, take a look at the level you came out at. There's an action that you should do and some quick wins. And if you're at the, fragmented and inconsistent, one thing that is very helpful is to conduct a current state inventory. Find out where you are. And the reason that I say that is not is not to double down on, oh my God, I'm terrible. Now I know I'm terrible. But oftentimes in organization, there are pockets of things that are working well. Find the pockets. Back in the day before AI meant artificial intelligence, there was an AI that meant appreciative inquiry. So I always come from a place of appreciative inquiry, find out what's working and do knowledge diffusion, get it in other parts of the organization. So find places that are working well. And so that's always really helpful. Start simple reporting on key programs if you're in foundational emerging, if you're not doing that already. And if you are, then figuring out how to make your reporting maybe a little bit more robust. If you're at coordinated and accelerating, look at how many champions you have and mentor others and get other people to be champions because you need them out in the organization. And then embedded and evolving, you're already doing really, really well, but integrate into planning conversations. So, and then there's some pitfalls to avoid, but start thinking about that. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take and actually create one. So Casey's going to upload to chat a blank version of this document. She actually has it in a link, actually. So you can go get it in a link. and put your readiness level on it based upon this last thing that you identified of where you are or where you really think you are. I mean, maybe you said, hey, I came out foundational, but I really think we're merging. It's okay. I'm not going to be checking. Um, and indicate your measurement strengths and what are the challenges you have. So I want you to have both because there's got to be something that's working in most organizations. I mean, some of it could just be attitude. Identify the key stakeholders you need to engage. Do not do this from the bottom up. You have to get a tops down. Bottoms up on its own will almost never stick. And identify some people, maybe some friendlies in the business. Identify top 3 actions that you want to take. Assessing readiness, identify the champions, agree on measures, whatever it happens to be, and then look at some risks and watch outs. In this, my example, getting bogged down in minutia happens all the time. Sometimes we get so bogged down in the minutia of the survey instruments that we forget why we're there. And sometimes everybody wants to weigh in and we can't always listen to that. So look at your organization, look at your culture, see how your culture behaves and say, what are the things that could undermine me? And use that as a way of starting to sort of build your next steps. So this is what this thing looks like. So you can ideally, start doing something. And this is a starting place. This is really basic. So if you've got a really great action planning template you want to use, go use it. But if you want to share it with me, if you want to talk about it, I'm open. I'm just really curious as to what people are doing. So I want to end with this, and this is about sustaining measurement. And what I say is the work begins now. I have lots of organizations who say, well, we have to wait. We have to wait until our data is clean. We have to wait until I've got the right people in place. We have to wait. And that is waiting forever and nothing is ever going to happen because if you wait, it'll never be the right time. I guarantee you. So you need to start now. Remember that measurement that lasts is anchored in strategy. You have to start early. You have to connect it to shared business goals. It's not a bolt on. It's enabled by people. People make it happen with clear roles, people who are comfortable with using data and safe practice zones, people who are enthusiastic about using it and seeing it as a growth opportunity. When I first got into this, by the way, I didn't choose this. It chose me. And I mean that deliberately because what happened was that the person who had it was being laid off and they go, it's yours, Peggy. And I go, I don't know what this is. And someone said to me after I was about 3 months in, she goes, this is going to change your career. And my response to her was, yeah, right. Because I was wondering, well, what did I do wrong? Who hates me? And I discovered that I loved it and it's become this my entire career. So she was right. Now, it's not going to be for everybody, but there's a lot you can learn and it can help you in any profession you go into, whether you're in L&D or anything. It is a discipline that is going to bode well for you for the rest of your career. Build for scale. It has to be built for scale because we cannot make this stuff really work unless it's built for scale. And make sure your processes are simple and sustainable. Ask yourself, if you have a process that's so complicated that I have to put it on 3 pages of a Visio diagram, it's probably not going to stick. So make sure that this is something that can sustain. So be critical of your processes and ask, how can we make them simpler? And then it's driven by decisions. Leaders model, they reward data-informed action. And what gets in the way? Leaders who disappear. Metrics that don't matter. Do not pick, don't work with the business and try to make up some measures. Ask, what are they measuring today? That's what they care about. I worked with a marketing team once and they were making up stuff. I said, did they measure it today? They said, no. I said, stop it. Stop it now. And look at what they're measuring and align with that. Tools without follow through and noise without insight. So my call to action for you, choose one lever to strengthen. Take one action, align to your readiness level. Start small, but start. So we have 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. Questions, stuff in chat, however you want to engage. I'd love to hear from you. And I really want, I'm sincere. Email me, tell me why you're emailing me. If you want to have a conversation, would love to. If you'd like us, Steve and I, to interview, we'd love to do that too. We're really interested in getting a breadth of stories and being able to showcase them.
Wonderful. This was so good, so rich. Thank you so much, Peggy, for all of that wisdom and insight.